That's what we as Christians need to do. You know what? That's got that cross on there, and it's a red cross, and that stands for the blood, and that stands for salvation, that stands for Jesus' sacrifice, that stands for everything that he did for us, and it's got the white for the purity, the righteousness that he makes us when he cleans us up. Everything that we are supposed to be and everything we are supposed to believe is symbolized and there, and we're supposed to fight for that. We're supposed to be in the battle for that. We're supposed to take that. We're supposed to take our colors, and we're supposed to march that way, not that way. We sing that song, where he leads me, I will follow. Really? Come on. We lie to ourselves a lot. You know that? We sing these songs that say how we're soldiers and we're brave, and wherever he calls me, I'm going to go, and whatever he bids me do, I'm going to do. And we don't. We don't. We need to begin to do that. We need to begin to get this in our mindset. It is time to fight. We are in a battle. We are in a warfare. And I said that until we get that right, we're not going to do anything out there. You've got to start here. You've got to get that first, and you've got to tear down the strongholds in your own life so that you can go out there and tear down strongholds. I ain't got a lot of time to get into a lot of this. Hopefully the Lord's going to let me continue on this sometime. But you've got to confront sin. You've got to confront evil. You've got to confront Satan. You've got to confront his demon. You've got to confront it. You can't just sit there and pray and pray and pray. You've got to go and look it right in the eye. You've got to step right up there. And I'm going to get a little bit more into that, but that's what you need to understand. You have got to do something, as James said. If you just pray, or you say, oh God, do this, and oh God, do that, and you don't do anything, it's for naught. It's not going to do anything. It says your faith is vain. It's useless. What good is it doing them for you to sit back here and say it and you not to do something? In the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, you know where we're going from. But I want you to really look at this. You've probably heard this preached more times than you can count. You probably read it. You probably quoted it. But we need to stop and think about it. What is it really saying? Ephesians chapter 6, beginning at verse 10. Finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. That's the first thing. You can't do anything in yourself. You do not have it. You don't have the strength. You don't have the ability. It's through the Lord. It's in the Lord. It's the power that he has. He has not given us that power today. He has given us the authority to use his power. He has given us the authority to use his name. And we've got to understand that. Sometimes we get so full of ourselves, we think we can go and do things. The first thing we got to understand, it is only through him. And it says here, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Then put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. A lot of us read that, and we say, I do that. I stand. And a lot of us do stand. The way we define it. This is standing. I don't have to do anything. I'm just standing. I'm just standing. That's not what he means. That's not what he's talking about. You know, in that sense, if you go back and you look it up, and what he's talking about in the sense of a soldier, in the sense of a warfare, in the sense of a battle, it means to hold a critical position on the battle line. That's what it means to stand. And it's like I was talking about the color. They strike the color somewhere and they take a stand. To take a stand doesn't just mean to stand there and whistle Dixie. When you take that stand, you repel whatever is coming at you. You fight back against whatever is coming at you. You're in a battle. You're not just standing still. A lot of times when we read it, we read the scripture, and it gets later to the end here where it says, and having done all to stand. We think having done all means come to church and say your prayers and say grace over your food and put your money in the offering. I've done all that, now all I got to do is stand here. That's not what he's saying. When you take a stand, you're holding a position in a battle line. You are repelling the enemy's attack. You are fighting back. You're not just immobile, just standing there and enjoying the weather and whatever else is going on. He said, put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the wiles or the schemes of Satan. Here's a lot of the problem, too, that we don't stand because we haven't put on the whole armor. And again, I know you've heard this talked about, preached about, read about, everything else. But stop and think what he is saying. He don't just say this because it makes a pretty mental picture. He don't just say that because it really makes a good analogy. There's a purpose to what he's saying here, and you need to understand what he's saying here. Get this. He said, when you put on the whole armor of God, then you can stand. You can hold a position, a critical position in that battle. You can stop Satan's advance. You can eventually push him back. You can stand against all the schemes. And then he goes on, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Listen, why did he say wrestle? Wrestle was hand to hand, face to face, flesh on flesh. It's up close. It's personal. You got to get in there and do it. He could have said, for we fight not against, or we war not against, or we battle not against. The words that are used for a reason, because it's personal. It's one-on-one. It's face to face. If you're back there and I'm up here, I can't wrestle you from here. You got to come together. You've got to stand up against it. Again, it's confrontation. You're probably all thinking, man, he wants us to get confrontational. Yeah, I do. Because you have to confront sin. You have to confront evil. If you don't, it ain't going nowhere. Except maybe forward. Advancing until we confront it. And I know it's hard. And I know it's not easy. And I know in this day and age the church is supposed to be all love. And the church is supposed to be nice to everybody. And the church is supposed to be tolerant of everything. We are supposed to have no fellowship with the unfruitful works of darkness, but rather reprove them. Confront them. How many of us do what Christ did? He told them, you're snakes, you're vipers, you're full of dead man's bones. He told them the truth, and that's what we need to do. We need to tell them the truth in love. Unless they're given the truth, nothing's ever going to change. If you just accept everything and love everybody and pat everybody on the head and tell them they're all right, nothing is ever going to change. And in order to do that, you've got to confront them. You've got to get confrontational. You've got to come face to face with them. And it's hard, and it ain't easy, and you're in your mind, you're telling yourself, well, if I say that, they'll never talk to me again. Well, if you don't say that, they may end up in hell. You may say to yourself, if I go and I tell them all that stuff, what are they going to think about me? If you don't say that, what are they going to think when they're burning in hell? They're going to be thinking, you should have told me. You should have told me. We have got to confront sin. It's time to quit pity-patting around. It's time to quit trying to be nice to everybody. It's time to quit trying to make everybody feel good in their sin. It's time to confront sin. It's time to confront evil. How come Satan has built such big strongholds and such hard things for us to overcome? Because we've just let everybody do their own thing and never said a word about it. We have got to confront sin face to face. We have got to wrestle against it. And again, I want you to understand, what to wrestle is one-on-one. It's face to face. It's personal. It's hand to hand. You can't wrestle from a distance. And again, I want you to get this. The praying is good. It's necessary. You need it. That's where you prepare for the battle. That's where God begins to work. Once you go to Him in prayer, He begins to move in the spiritual realm. But nothing happens till you get there. You've got to go there. And then you've got to confront it. You've got to get personal. It's got to be face to face. They said we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. I wish that God would just give you a vision. I close my eyes and I imagine. You know, when I pray, and I seek God's strength, and I seek God's assistance, and I seek God's guidance, and specifically for any thing or a person or whatever. This is how I see it. God begins to dispatch angels who will fight for you, who will put a protection around you or put a barrier around you, because when you go to confront that evil on the other side, there's a bunch of demons who are trying to push back and trying to fight back. If you could see it in the spiritual realm and understand what is going on, there is a constant battle between good and evil. There's a constant battle between light and dark. And do you know where light gets its strength? Here. Here. Through our prayers, through our obedience, through our willingness to go and to do things and to confront evil. And that's how this operates. You have got to wrestle against flesh and, not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and power and the rulers of wickedness and all those things. That person you're looking at is not your enemy. That person you're looking at is not the one you are fighting. That person you're looking at is not the one who's out to destroy you. It's the forces of darkness, it's the forces of evil, it's Satan, it's his demon, it's all those things. And that's where we are fighting. But until you understand it, and until you get a hold of it, you cannot battle them. You can't fight them. You can't win. You can't overcome them. That's why it's necessary to understand these things. He says that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. Wherefore, which just means for this reason, take unto you the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand an evil day, and having done all to stand. And again, before I go on, that don't mean just standing around doing nothing. That means to hold the battle line, to hold the position, to protect the colors, to stand for the colors, to repulse the enemy's advance, to repulse the enemy's attack. He says if you take on the whole armor of God, then you'll be able to stand. Then you'll be able to hold them back. Then you'll be able to conquer. Then you'll be able to do all this thing. Then he says, stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth. What is truth? This is truth. And everything else that we have, everything else we do, everything else we're going to be, everything we're going to accomplish is all attached to this, the Word of God. He said here, probably all of you have heard this or know this. He said, having your loins girded about with truth. And the soldiers in those days had a belt to which the rest of the armor attached to keep it all where it was supposed to be. You can't use anything, you can't have anything, you can't hope to have anything without the truth, because everything else attaches to the Word. It's got to be attached to this. And that means you've got to know it. You've got to understand it. You've got to get into it. He said, then standing therefore with your loins girded about with truth, having on the breastplate of righteousness. Righteousness. What is righteousness? We throw that word around. What is it? In its simplest form, it just means living right. And unless you're living right, you can be attacked. Unless you're living right, you can be conquered. Unless you're living right, you can be defeated. Unless you're living right, you don't have a breastplate. You're exposed. Your vital organs are exposed. Your lungs, your heart, all these vital organs that are in here are exposed unless you've got that breastplate on. And that breastplate is righteousness. It's right living. That's basically what it is. Unless we're living the truth, unless we're living the Word, unless we're living according to that, then we're vulnerable. We've left open areas. We have to live this. 100% this. Not what the church teaches, not what the denomination teaches, not what mom and dad teach, not what anybody else teaches. We've got to live this 100% in order to protect our vital areas. And if you really look at it and you think about it, the main thing you think about here is the heart. Because that's where God looks. Man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. What matters to God is your heart. And unless you're living right from your heart, then you're exposed. And I'm going fast. I just hope you get it. Listen. Having on the breastplate of righteousness and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. And if you go back in the original language and you look at all that, it means an eagerness. That preparation means an eagerness for the gospel. And it's on the feet. Why? Because it is the feet that carry you. It is the feet that take you. Wherever you go, your feet's going with you. And it's an eagerness to take that and to go, to take that gospel of Jesus Christ. And that gospel is that every man's a sinner, and every man has been born in sin. And until he realizes his need for a Savior, he's doomed and lost for a battle, for a devil's hell. That's the gospel. What is the gospel? It is the good news of Jesus Christ, that he came and he died, that sinners could be set free, that we could escape hell. And when you have that in your eagerness, and that's what it means. You go back and look it up if you don't believe me. It's an eagerness to take the gospel, the truth of Jesus Christ out there. And if you go back and you look at these soldiers, those Roman soldiers had a special kind of shoe that they wore when they went into battle that would enable them to get good traction and good grip so that they could advance on the enemy through any kind of terrain, any kind of situation, whether it was wet or dry or rocky or whatever. These shoes that they had were a special kind of shoe that would enable them to get traction. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you live that word and you speak that word and you go according to that word, you can go over anything, through anything. It doesn't matter what the terrain is like. It doesn't matter what's going on. But listen to what it said. You got to have an eagerness to take the gospel to them. And I'm going to throw it in. Inviting people to church is not being a witness. Inviting people to church is not being a light. Inviting people to church is not going into the highways and the byways. It's a good thing. Keep doing it. Don't stop doing it. But that's not going out and taking the gospel and confronting the enemy where he's built up. We need to go to the strongholds. And I hope these guys don't mind, but they're here and you know what they do, so it's easy to use this for an example. Everybody knows there's some, they call them one percenters, some bad motorcycles, gangs, this, that, whatever else. They got a reputation. They're nasty. They do a lot of things. I mean, there's gangs out there like the Hells Angels and the Pagans and this and that are murdering and drugging and selling drugs and doing that and doing all these kind of things. They're evil personified. That's the stronghold of Satan. But there are people going into that stronghold and making a difference. Why? Because they're doing it this way. They're confronting Satan on his ground. They're not just going out there and say, you ought to come over to our church Sunday. See ya. They're there in the midst of it, fighting Satan. One-on-one, face-to-face, wrestling against principalities and powers and the rulers of darkness. And that's what we need to do. That's how we're going to do this thing. That's how we're going to tear down strongholds. That's how we're going to set captives free. That's how we're going to pull some out of his clutches. It has to be done this way. And again, don't get me wrong, I'm not picking on you and I'm not putting you down. But just inviting people to church ain't going to do it. It ain't going to do it. You got to go out there. You got to confront it. You got to get in the middle of it and fight against it. That's the only way that we're going to accomplish anything. We can put up signs, we can hand out literature, we can do this, and we can do that, and it's not going to do much of nothing until you're willing to take a stand and go out there and stand up for the cause and progress on the enemy's ground. You are not going to accomplish much. We got to take the fight to him. And in order to do that, we've got to do it this way. Your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. How can they go in there? They're prepared. They've got on those shoes. They've got on that breastplate. They've prayed. They've prepared the way. They put on the armor, and they've marched in there. And because they have the correct stuff on, they can go in. And they can accomplish things. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. Back to James. It's good to have faith. But if you don't do something, then your faith is vain. What did James say? Show me your faith without works, and I'll show you my faith by my works. By action. By action is how you prove faith. By action is how you demonstrate faith. By action is how you display faith. By action is how faith comes alive. You have got to do something. And he said, above all, taking the shield of faith. If you're in action for Christ, if you've done everything else up to this point, and you've prepared and you're ready and you go, what does he say? If you go in faith, then every fiery dart that Satan throws at you will be snuffed out. That's what he said. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. You don't have to go in fear. You don't have to go in trembling. You don't have to go in worried what they're going to do to you. Because he said if you go in this way,